The first sound wasn't music. It wasn't a movie quote or a voice actor's tagline. It was a tone, a screech, a series of mechanical beeps, followed by a hiss of static cutting through silence like a message from deep space. If you were a child of the 90s or early 2000s, you didn't just hear it, you felt it. That modem handshake wasn't just a noise, it was a gateway. In an era before smartphones, before broadband, before we Googled anything or slid into DMs, we logged in. And not just anywhere. We logged into America Online, AOL. This was the moment the internet became something personal, tangible, emotional even. A portal not to information, but to people. To a world that buzzed with possibility behind a glowing screen. One where every login was a tiny voyage, and the most exciting words a computer could speak weren't access denied. They were,
"You've got mail."
If you had a PC in the 1990s, chances are it had America Online installed at some point. Or maybe you remember the discs, those shiny little coasters that came in cereal boxes, Sunday newspapers, junk mail, and sometimes just randomly showed up in your mailbox. They were everywhere, in every color, every version, 1,000 free hours, try AOL Gold, version 6.0, now with better chats. At the height of its expansion, AOL was sending out over 1 million CDs per day. It was more than a marketing strategy. It was saturation warfare. They didn't just want to be an option. They wanted to be the option. And for a while, they were. Imagine this. It's 1997. You sit down at your family's Compaq or Dell tower, nestled in a computer nook or spare bedroom. You click the AOL icon, a bright yellow man running, and then you wait. The AOL interface pops up like a digital city. Mail, chat, news, weather, sports, celebrity gossip, preloaded links, curated portals, and of course, that little door icon in the bottom corner that would show your friends logging in. It felt alive. And then, the voice. You've got mail. Sometimes a miracle, sometimes a curse, and sometimes a spam from Blockbuster. But still, mail. To understand how huge AOL was, you have to understand the early to mid-90s internet. It wasn't user-friendly, it was clunky, it was raw, it was weird. If you weren't a computer science major or a hardcore hobbyist, you weren't typing in IP addresses or hanging out in Unix-based bulletin boards. There was no YouTube, no Reddit, no TikTok algorithm reading your brainwaves and feeding you cat videos at 3 a.m. The World Wide Web was still in its infancy, HTML-heavy, text-driven, and mostly unregulated. AOL stepped in like a parent who puts a helmet on the chaos. It simplified everything. It created a walled garden of the internet, curated, sanitized, and branded. AOL gave you an email address, a news feed, entertainment options, games, and most crucially, chat rooms. You didn't have to know how to internet, you just had to click. And suddenly, your computer wasn't a tool, it was a portal to community. For kids and teens, this was mind-blowing. You weren't just on your block anymore. You were in a room full of people from Florida, Michigan, Arizona, Australia. Complete strangers, all connected by a few typed words. Sometimes cool, sometimes creepy, but still incredible. Before TikTok handles or Instagram usernames, there was only one true digital identity, your screen name. And boy, did it matter. Creating an AOL screen name was like creating a second self. Your real name didn't matter. You were Skaterboy 93, or XO Baby 87, or The Real Slim Shady 82. You spent way too long coming up with it, only to find out your first 5 ideas are taken. So you added underscores, numbers, random X's, maybe a song lyric, maybe your crush's initials, and maybe an inside joke only your best friend would understand. These names lived. They logged in, hung out in chat rooms, sent messages, and filled boxes full of emails. You weren't just you were your screen name. And when it popped up in a buddy's window, it meant something. Let's talk about the buddy list. It was your internet family tree, a live scroll of everyone you cared about, or at least cared to talk to. Friends, crushes, cousins, classmates, people from band camp, people from Yahoo forums, that one person you met in a Backstreet Boys chat room. Each time someone logged in, That iconic door creaked open. You watched that list like a hawk. And when that one name, you know the one, popped up, your heart rate jumped. You stared at the screen. Do you IM them? Do you wait for them to IM you? Half the time you didn't say anything. It just mattered that you were online together. Using AOL meant navigating your own home's version of internet hierarchy. For a lot of us, there was only one phone line. And if you were online, no one could make a call. And if someone picked up the phone, boom, connection gone. Instant rage. Parents hated this. There were multiple tirades, mostly with them wanting to call someone. They didn't get it. This wasn't just the computer. This was your life. And if you had a younger sibling, forget about it. You practically had to schedule internet time like a shared car. Weeknights were a negotiation, but weekends, they were sacred. And God forbid the connection dropped in the middle of a deep AAM convo. The heartbreak was real. Even visually, AOL was unmistakable. The interface was clunky, but colorful. Menus, pop-up windows, low-res buttons with bold fonts. The AOL keyword search bar wasn't a search engine. It was a directory, a cheat code into branded pages. But what we remember most wasn't just the layout, it was the vibe. The lo-fi interface sounds, the login voice, the cartoonish icons, the little running man animation, the sounds of typing, the background buzz over an overheating monitor. It wasn't clean, it wasn't modern, but it was personal. And back then, when the digital world still felt new and magical, that kind of familiarity was rare. We talked about the CDs, but here's what's wild. AOL's physical discs were as much a part of the 90s life as cassette tapes or Pokemon cards. They showed up like magic. You get a package from Toys R Us or Pizza Hut, and inside, boom, a fresh new version of AOL. Some people collected them. Others used them as drink coasters or frisbees. They piled up in drawers like relics. Some had flames on the label. Others had gold trim. Some came with mini instruction books that promised faster, mind-blowing speed and better email. There was always the promise of free hours. 500, 750, 1,000. It made the internet feel like a resource you had to ration, like water in the desert. But here's the trick. You never really ran out. You just kept installing new versions. Before social media, before comment sections, before Discord or Twitch or Zoom, there were chat rooms, and they were wild. You could join interest-based chat rooms like rock music fans or teen scene or video games or writer's lounge. You could make your own, invite your friends, boot people out, get booted yourself. You could drop into local singles just to see what the weird adults were doing and instantly regret it. The chats moved fast. The usernames were insane. You learned typing shortcuts. You developed a tone. You used BRB, ASL, TTYL, G2G, LOL, OMG, LMAO, and more without blinking. We weren't just learning the internet lingo, we were inventing it. It was a wild and weird digital jungle. Before AOL became the digital mall of the 1990s, it had to solve a key problem. How do you bring internet to people who don't even know what the internet is? Back in the late 80s and early 90s, only a few households had internet access, and even fewer had the desire for it. The general public still saw computers as tools for accountants or hackers, not something you'd use for a chat with a stranger or to download celebrity gossip. But AOL didn't see computers as machines. They saw them as media devices. They were way ahead of their time in one crucial way. They sold emotion, not specs. Their interface was playful. Their marketing was inviting. They didn't sell you bandwidth. They sold you belonging. Their message was simple. Don't worry about the internet. Let us handle that. Just click. Steve Case, AOL's co-founder and eventual CEO, was the architect of the company's rise. A former marketing executive, Case knew that tech didn't have to be cold. It could be human. He wanted AOL to feel warm, inviting, like walking into a neighborhood bar or a friendly living room. And it worked. By the mid-1990s, AOL was growing fast, faster than anyone expected. It wasn't just a service, it was a movement. Millions of users logged on daily. By 1997, AOL had more subscribers than all other online services combined. By 1999, it was worth over $150 billion. This wasn't just tech success. This was cultural domination. And what sealed it all was the voice of Elwood Edwards, the man behind "Welcome, Goodbye," and the holy grail of internet phrases, "You've got mail." He recorded the lines in his living room using a cassette deck. He was paid a flat fee, and then his voice became immortal. AOL wasn't just a tool, it shaped the culture. It made its way into movies, TV, magazines, and late-night monologues. You've Got Mail wasn't just a system notification. It became a whole romantic comedy. Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Dial-Up Dreams. It was a story about falling in love on AOL, pure 1998. Sitcoms referenced it constantly. Commercials made parodies. Even The Simpsons had jokes about it. It became shorthand for the internet. Even when the rest of the web had grown beyond it, AOL was the internet for millions. And just like MTV became the cultural tastemaker of the 80s, AOL became the pulse of the digital 1990s. Everything about AOL's design was engineered to make it feel like home. The AOL desktop had buttons for mail, chat, news, weather, and sports, and kids only. There were floating windows, like digital post-it notes you could drag around. AOL keywords helped you jump straight to topics or branded pages. Want Pepsi content? Type Pepsi. Boom, you were there. The parental controls gave families a sense of safety. This wasn't the wild, unfiltered web. This was AOL's cozy corner. Even the chat rooms felt manageable, moderated, contained, human. Compare that to early internet's lawless bulletin boards and hacker forums, and you understand why AOL won. It felt like the mall, not a back alley, like Disney World, and not a sketchy house party. AOL didn't just provide content, it taught us how to be online. We learned how to write emails, how to attach files, how to click hyperlinks and browse websites. We learned etiquette, how to politely type, how to use emojis, how to pace a chat. We learned what a spammer was. We learned what LOL meant. We learned to fear strangers with no profile picture and suspiciously good grammar. AOL was more than a product. It was internet school. And when broadband eventually came around, we graduated, but we never forgot who taught us. At the heart of it all was AIM, AOL Instant Messenger. Launched as a standalone app in 1997, AIM was the digital telepathy for teens. Your screen name was your badge. Your buddy list was your tribe. Your away message, that was your mood board. AIM introduced an entire generation to the idea of being online together. Even when you weren't talking, it made presence itself feel like a social signal. You'd log on just to be seen. You'd linger on AIM even when doing homework, eating dinner, or pretending to be asleep. You weren't on the computer, you were available. It was presence as identity, years before Facebook statuses or Instagram stories. Away messages weren't just BRB. They were quotes, lyrics, jokes, inside references. They were poetry, passive aggression, teenage heartbreak in 120 characters. They were coded messages to one person, disguised as public broadcasts. Every away message was like a snapshot, a vibe, a ghost. You'd log on late at night and scroll through your friends' away statuses like a secret diary. Who was hanging out with who? Who was throwing shade? Who just had their heart broken? It was public vulnerability before it had a name. If you close your eyes, you can still hear it. The door opening when someone logged in. The closing when they left. The dink of a new IM. The slow, stuttery typing sounds as someone replied. Agonizing because it meant they were writing something. Sometimes it took forever. You'd stare at the typing notification like it was oxygen, and then boom, nothing much you appeared on the screen. It was anticipation that mattered. Every ping was potential. Every pause was tension. In AIM, conversations weren't just about words, they were all about timing. As AIM evolved, so did the customization. You could pick buddy icons, tiny pixel art avatars that said everything and nothing. A dolphin, a heart, a spinning smiley face. Eventually, you could upload your own, show your team, your fandom, your zodiac sign. Then came away message packs, fonts, skins, little mods that would let you change the vibe of your AIM window. It wasn't much, but in a world before profile pics and filters, it felt like branding. You weren't just a name, you were a vibe. AIM didn't just allow social behavior, it dictated it. Log on, wait 5 seconds, see who's there, don't message first, or maybe message right away. Or maybe log off and log back on so they see your name again, a classic power move. Friendships were made and broken in IM windows. Relationships started. Fights unfolded. Crushes fizzled. Inside jokes were born. This was the place where all middle school politics, high school drama, AIM wasn't just a chat app. It was a stage. AOL wasn't just about chatting. It had verticals, whole mini worlds you could live in. AOL Kids gave younger users games, trivia, and cartoons. AOL Music offered previews, streaming samples, interviews, and music news years before Spotify existed. AOL Games had checkers, trivia, poker, and even downloadable stuff like You Don't Know Jack. It wasn't just a portal, it was many portals, all packed into one. And for kids whose parents wouldn't let them explore the wider web, AOL became the internet. AOL chat rooms were like digital societies. Some were about fandom, Star Wars, Backstreet Boys, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Others were about hobbies, photography, fantasy sports, cars, and some were just chaos. Trolls, role players, wannabe hackers, hopeless romantics, all mingling in 16-bit harmony. The mods tried to keep the order. Sometimes they succeeded, but sometimes they were the problem. No matter the case, they were always a thrill. Sometimes they felt like the Midwest, sometimes like summer camp, but they always felt like something real. By the early 2000s, AIM had morphed from a simple chat tool into a full-blown social canvas. Profiles became the precursor to Facebook walls, little boxes where you could list your favorite quotes, inside jokes, initials of friends, or weird text art. So profiles and profile hacks emerged, external links with entire blog-style pages hosted on platforms like Llama or GURL pages. There were status wars. You'd casually list someone in your profile, and if they didn't return the favor, drama. And of course, the link stalking era began. Clicking into crushes' subpages, scanning their profiles, line by line for clues. It was primitive social media, text-driven, highly emotional, and wildly addictive. If you were a teen in the AIM era, having a crush meant waiting for them to log on, leaving a mysterious away message in hopes they'd see it, freaking out when they IM'd you, even if it was just, hey, rereading old convos like they were Shakespeare. You didn't just like someone, you watched their online habits. You know what time they usually logged on. You memorized their screen name typing cadence. It was romantic espionage. It was obsession, dramatized in pixelated windows. And when the relationship went south, you'd post a sad dashboard lyric in your away message and disappear for hours. Digital heartbreak. Universal, invisible, and unforgettable. By 2001, AOL was still dominant, but the digital winds were shifting. Napster had arrived, teaching a generation how to download music for free. MySpace was bubbling up, and customizable profiles with real names. Broadband was spreading, killing dial-up cable modems one at a time. Still, AOL tried to stay ahead. They brought ICQ, another chat client. They integrated music previews and celebrity interviews. They launched AOL journals, early prototype blogs. They even toyed with video chat years before Zoom. But even as they innovated, they could not shake the feeling of being a little outdated. AOL still felt like that mall you went to, but mostly out of habit. In 2000, AOL pulled off one of the most ambitious and ultimately disastrous moves in corporate history. They merged with Time Warner. The logic seemed sound. AOL had the audience, Time Warner had the content. Together, they would dominate. Instead, it was a culture clash. Old media versus new tech. Paper versus pixels. Executives who didn't understand each other, let alone the pace of the internet. The dot-com bubble burst shortly after. AOL's stock plummeted. The magic started to fade. And that little yellow running man, he started to feel tired. Let's talk about speed. In the early days, AOL's dial-up service averaged around 56 kbps, that's kilobits per second. To download a single MP3, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. To watch a video, forget about it. But by the early 2000s, broadband was taking over. Cable and DSL offered speeds 10 times faster. You didn't need to tie up a phone line. It was instant on, no dial-up, no beeping, no drop calls. AOL tried to offer a broadband version, but by then, users had moved on. They didn't want AOL's interface. They wanted the open web. AOL had made the internet accessible, but now it felt like training wheels. As broadband took hold, the dominoes began to fall. People stopped using AOL Mail. AIM became less relevant as new platforms like Facebook Chat, Gmail, and later iMessage rose. Chat rooms emptied out. "You've Got Mail" became a punchline, not a thrill. The glorious empire of AOL started shrinking. They laid off staff. They spun off subsidiaries. They quietly faded from cultural conversation. By 2006, AOL dropped the internet subscription requirement. By 2009, it was split from Time Warner. By 2010, AAM was a ghost town. And on December 15th, 2017, AOL Instant Messenger officially shut down. An era ended, not with a bang, but with a closed door chime. Losing AAM wasn't just about losing a chat app. It was about losing a format. We lost the slow burn of a long IM convo. We lost away messages that spoke in half-truths. We lost the feeling when being online meant something. Modern messaging is faster, cleaner, and more integrated, but it's also less poetic. In AIM, a chat felt like a moment. Now, just a bubble. To their credit, AOL didn't disappear completely. They pivoted to content, buying the Huffington Post, launching AOL Originals, becoming a media brand more than an access provider. They tried branded entertainment. They dabbled in video. They even acquired TechCrunch and Engadget, but it was always reactive, not revolutionary. Other platforms had already claimed the crown. Google owned search. Facebook owned identity. YouTube owned videos. And Apple owned devices. AOL, it became a relic, a place you remembered, not one you used. Still, even as the platform declined, the nostalgia grew. You've Got Mail became a meme. AIM logos got printed on t-shirts. Screenshots of old away messages went viral on Tumblr. There were throwback accounts dedicated to early internet culture. Zines, TikToks, and YouTube essays about the AOL era. Even vinyl pressings of dial-up sounds. We missed the sound, the slowness, the weirdness. AOL became something rare, a brand that went from high-tech powerhouse to vintage icon. For many of us, AOL was our first internet, our first email, first online friend, first digital heartbreak, first screen name, first password, our first time being grounded because someone picked up the phone while we were chatting with our best friend about the school dance. It wasn't just a product, it was a coming-of-age experience. Logging into AOL was like walking into a secret clubhouse, one built not of wood, but out of windows. And when it was gone, it left a hole, a weird, pixel-shaped hole. The internet moves fast, but memory doesn't. By the 2010s, AOL wasn't on most people's minds, but then something strange happened. The nostalgia began to rise. Gen Xers and millennials started to look back at their early digital years with a kind of wistful affection. The sounds, the pacing, the rituals. It was a far cry from the always-on, ultra-connected chaos of now. And for Gen Z, those born after the AOL boom, AOL became a form of mythology, a symbol of the weird internet, a time when being online was an event, not a default state. What do you see when you think about AOL? Beige towers of blinking lights, CRT monitors with curved glass screens, plastic AOL CDs stacked like poker chips, blue and white login boxes, pixelated icons and low-res buttons. There's a visual aesthetic to AOL that screams late 90s digital. And in an age of sleek dark modes and borderless apps, it now feels oddly beautiful. This is part of the broader Y2K aesthetic movement, embracing the chunky, the weird, the analog digital hybrids that once defined our lives. AOL fits right in. You can find YouTube videos now that are just AOL sounds. The modem handshake, the login chime, welcome, you've got mail, the door sounds, the typing clicks. Thousands of comments below these videos describe the same feeling. This just hit me like a freight train. I haven't heard this in more than 20 years and now I'm crying. This is the sound of coming home. Sound is memory. In AOL Soundscape, it was one of the most iconic in tech history. AOL became shorthand for a different kind of internet. It shows up in Stranger Things style period pieces, TikToks with CRT filters and typing montages, vaporwave music videos with floating AIM windows, digital art projects recreating vintage desktop experiences, video essays on YouTube with titles like Why AOL Made Me Feel Safe or Logging Into My Past. We began to romanticize AOL, not because it was perfect, but because it felt human, flawed, slow, and colorful, just like us. The death of AIM didn't stop its resurrection. Over the years, fans have recreated the AIM interface in web browsers, launched clones like Echelon and Back AIM, designed screensavers that look like early AOL desktops, built Discord bots that mimic the AIM tone and status formats. Even Spotify playlists titled AIM Away Message Vibes exist, filled with early 2000s emo, indie, and pop punk. It's not about going back, it's about remembering what it felt like. There's something sacred about old tech now. AOL discs show up in thrift stores framed as art. AOL boxes are being sold on eBay as collectibles. Some people display vintage AIM login screens at old laptops at conventions. That's like having an ancient coin from the early days of Rome. But this empire was digital. Preserving AOL is preserving the feeling of early exploration, when the internet was a mystery, not a utility. AOL was not a feed. There was no infinite scroll, no likes, no algorithm whispering in your ear. You chose your chat room. You checked your mail. You visited places like a traveler, not a hostage. There was an intentionality to it. That's why part of it lingers in your memory. The internet didn't come to you. You went to it. You can trace the DNA of AOL across today's web. Away messages became statuses, then tweets, then stories. Buddy lists became Facebook friends and Instagram followers. Screen names paved the way for handles. Chat rooms became Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter spaces. The AOL portal morphed into Google Discover, Apple News, and Spotify homepages. AOL didn't just participate in the internet, it designed its language. Even in the final years, AOL refused to completely disappear. They ran original content. They dabbled in podcasts. They maintained a small base of dial-up users, yes, even in the 2010s. They survived long enough to be bought by Verizon in 2015, bundled with Yahoo. And now, they're a part of Yahoo Inc., again, merged, melted, forgotten by most. But the brand still exists. AOL Mail still runs. You can still log in. And somewhere, a dusty server still pings back, "Welcome." So why do we still feel so much for AOL? Maybe because it was our first portal. Maybe it's because it was simpler. Maybe it was because the last time the internet felt like a place and not a product. AOL wasn't just software. It was time travel. A bridge between the analog and the digital. Between landlines and live streams. Between friendship bracelets and buddy icons. It was where we grew up. Where we figured out who we were, one away message at a time. There's something different about your first car, your first crush, your first time staying up late just to be online, hoping someone logs in. AOL was the first for millions. Before social media, before streaming, before everything was monetized, tracked, and optimized, there was a little yellow man running across our screens. He wasn't perfect, but he got us online. And in that moment, whether it was 1995, 2000, or 2004, that felt like magic. When you logged into AOL, you didn't just enter a feed, you entered a portal. You checked your mail, visited rooms, opened doors. The internet wasn't about you, it wasn't a stage, it was a neighborhood. Sure, you had a profile and a screen name, but mostly you were just a citizen, wondering, exploring, watching. There was a humility in it, a smallness that felt comforting. We weren't trying to go viral. We were trying to connect. Today's internet is lightning fast. Instant results, constant refreshes, overwhelming noise. AOL was slow, and that was part of the experience. Logging in was a process. Conversations had pauses. You waited for someone to respond, watched the typing bubble, with a mix of excitement and dread. You stared at your buddy list like it was the night sky, waiting for a name to appear. There was anticipation, there was mystery. And sometimes that made it more real. AOL made us believe that virtual relationships could be as real as physical ones. You had best friends you'd never met in person. People who knew everything about you. Your secrets, your crushes, your favorite lyrics. You built bonds through typed words, late night confessions, and shared away messages. Some of those friendships faded. Some became lifelong connections. Some turned into first loves. But they all mattered. And they were forged not in high-resolution selfies or 15-second clips, but in pixelated chats and glowing CRT monitors. Before social media, AOL let us curate ourselves. Our screen names were our masks. Our profiles were our monologues. Our away messages were our mood rings. You could be funny, mysterious, flirty, deep. You could reinvent yourself one message at a time. That power, the ability to project and perform, didn't start with Instagram. It started with AIM. And while platforms have changed, the first instinct, still the same. 3 words, that's all it took. You've got mail. Not new notification, not inbox with a red 1, not a you've been tagged. It was personal, a message for you, a voice telling you that someone, somewhere, thought of you enough to say something. That phrase is part of our cultural DNA now, a shorthand for simpler times, a warm memory wrapped in syllables. And it wasn't just a sound clip, it was an invitation. Try explaining AOL to someone born after 2005, and you might sound like a historian. You had to wait to go online. You couldn't use the phone at the same time. There were rooms full of people just talking. You had to dial into the internet like a long-distance call. You had to know what a long-distance call was. You had an identity made of characters, not pictures. We didn't just use AOL, we lived there. And now, it's gone. Not because it died suddenly, but because the world just moved on. Sometimes, in the middle of a quiet night, you'll remember it. The low buzz of the fan in your bedroom. The glow of the monitor. The AIM window still open. The ping of a new message. The door as someone left. The quiet disappointment when the screen goes idle. These are not just memories, they're digital ghosts. They linger, and once in a while, they whisper. AOL may be gone from our desktops, but it's everywhere in our internet DNA. It taught us how to connect, how to express, how to be seen, how to shape the digital world with humor, empathy, and creativity, how to tell someone they mattered, with nothing but text and timing. Every app we use now, every message we send, every meme we share, every notification we get, it all traces back to a sound, a screen, a simple phrase, welcome. This wasn't just a tech story. It's a story about growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s. AOL gave us a window to the world, but it felt like more than that. It gave us a window into ourselves. It let us build personas, create friendships, speak freely, experiment, explore, and eventually log off. Today, when we swipe, scroll, or tap, some part of us still remembers when it all felt new, when going online was a choice, not a compulsion, when AOL made the internet feel like a place and not just a feed. And though the servers are quiet, the doors long closed, the messages have already been read. Somewhere, deep in our memory, we've still got mail. This has been Retrowaved. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to subscribe, comment, and check out our social channels on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.